welcome back to our channel. Today I wanted to show you guys our tomato plants. If you've been watching any of our previous videos, you know we have this tiny little backyard. Here, I'll show it to you. It's about that wide and that long. Sorry about my hair. And we're trying to grow tomato plants in it, and that's quite the challenge. So our solution has been to go vertical. I guess I should just get right into it, show you I guess I'll just show you guys the results, and then I'll tell you how we got those results. So here is one tomato plant. All the way up there. It's got two main stems, but it goes all the way down to one at the bottom. But look at that. Look at how crazy tall this bush is. Here it is next to me. For comparison, I'm 5'8". Look at this thing. That's a good, what, 2 feet taller than me? Crazy, right? So, and here's our other tomato plant. This one's almost 5'8". This one's got bigger tomatoes on it, and this one is cherry tomatoes. So this one, the big tomato plant started out smaller. This one started out a little bit bigger, but I think that the big tomato plant, I say big, the plant that produces the big tomatoes is growing slower because it's got these crazy weight on it from these giant tomatoes. Anyway, I digress. I'll get into that later. Let me show you what we did to produce these fantastically huge, amazing results. We started off with one tomato plant, and we let it, oh shoot, you can't really see it here. Try to get into the back here. Spiders. We let it grow into 2 stems. You can see right here. This one is actually the main plant, and this is a sucker. Oh, shoot, I think I took them all off, so I can't really show you. And they're so high, I can't really get to them anymore. Dang it. Well, I'll show you down here. Here's where we took one off. Each leaf that a tomato plant grows, so here's a leaf. Between each leaf, or not each leaf, but most leaves, it grows one sucker. Here's where we pulled one off. A sucker is a whole second tomato plant. So by leaving the suckers on and just letting it grow naturally, it tends to be very bushy and it tends not to be very tall because the tomato is putting all this energy into growing more and more tomato plants. Each sucker will grow off a shoot and produce its own flowers, which will produce its own tomatoes. So some people think, oh, let all the suckers grow, right? And I'll get more tomatoes. Yeah, sort of, I guess, but your tomato plant's gonna be really bushy, and we have no lack of tomatoes. Check this out. Look at these bunches of tomatoes. Got them back there, through here. This one goes all the way down to here, and it's still producing a couple more flowers. Look at these. And now once we get to the top, it's going crazy. Now they're branching out into 2 sections per fruit branch. This one, look at this. Look at this. This is one branch that branched into 2 here. This one branched into 2. And this one branched into 2. And this one both of these branched into 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 branches of flowers off of one flower shoot. That's insane. We've got more up here, and then all the way at the top, we've got even more. Check, look, this one did the same thing. We've got how many on the end here? 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one's not done growing, so it's branching more. Crazy, right? So yeah, no lack of tomatoes from one plant. If you notice something else about these plants is look how much air there is in between here. Look at how clear these are. There's getting air through there. The tomatoes have lots of room to breathe. So there's no disease, there's no tomatoes hiding in there. We know where every single one of our tomatoes are, and none of them come by surprise. Notice how each branch of tomatoes is super long and even. This is accomplished by deciding which tomato flowering shoots we want to grow and which ones we don't want to grow, and that's accomplished mostly by pruning off the suckers and only allowing the main stem to grow up. That was a lot of talk to say, prune your suckers off and just let the main stem grow. Like I said, we grew 2 main stems. We allowed 1 sucker to grow to get a few more tomatoes because we only had 1 plant. But like I said, you let those 2 main stems grow up to the roof and you have plenty of tomatoes. We did the same thing with our big tomato plant, 1 stem, and we didn't even let 2 stems grow off this one because they're such big tomatoes. But these ones didn't produce as many fruits. I think it's just because they're bigger fruits, but it's still growing and it's still putting off new flowers. So we'll see how that ends up at the end of the year. I have yet to be able to recommend pruning on the large tomatoes just because they're not done growing, so I'm not sure what the final result is. For a while there, I was concerned about our cherry tomato plant because I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's only a few flowering sections, they're not gonna produce a lot, and then the tops grew, and the tops have grown 1,003 tomatoes. My theory behind that is the plant realized that it wasn't growing all its suckers, so it wasn't producing a lot of fruit, and it was like, gee, gosh, I need to compensate for this. And so at the top, it started growing thousands upon thousands of flowers, which are all producing tomatoes. Speaking of getting the flowers to produce tomatoes, that is the second part of what we've been doing for these plants. So, let me show you this. Every time I see a bunch of flowers, I come up and I flick it. 2 fingers, just like that. Why do I flick it? Tomatoes self-pollinate. They still need something to dampen the pollen in, but each flower has both of the pollens it needs to be able to self-pollinate itself. They don't have to go one flower to other flower or have a different bush pollinate with it. So in nature, it just relies on a bee landing on the flower and knocking the pollen down into it. But instead, if I want to speed this up, I just come and I flick each one for a couple seconds. Sorry, this isn't focusing very well, but you get the idea. Just like that. Come on, focus. There we go. And as you can see, every single flower has taken. And you can see even these little ones up front. Tiny little tomato in there. And that is how we've gotten these massive, long, grape-like strands of tomatoes. Look at that. Not a single one of these flowers didn't take. All of those pollinated, down to the last one I've got going here. The last thing we've done to make these tomatoes produce so wonderfully is as soon as the tomatoes become ripe, we pick them. That signals the plant to grow more tomatoes. The plant's natural instinct is to try to produce more and more fruit so that it can drop the fruit and reproduce. And when you pick the tomatoes, it's like, oh no, the tomatoes are leaving, some animal's eating it, whatever. I need to make more fruit to make sure that I can reproduce. So every time you pick a tomato, it sparks it to make more tomatoes. So I know a lot of people like to wait for their whole bush to go red. No, don't do that. You're gonna get a short supply of tomatoes. It's gonna be like, oh no, I've got enough fruit, I don't need to make more. Don't do that. Pick your tomatoes. So some of you might be pruning your tomatoes, doing great, and all of a sudden look at your bush one day and realize, oh no, I missed a sucker. And now it's grown into this huge second plant, so long or whatever. And, maybe it's got flowers, maybe it's got fruit on it already, and you're like, dang, I want my tomato to grow taller, but I hate to waste this whole second plant. I hate to waste the fruit, I don't know about you guys, but I feel bad when I waste a plant that's already doing good. So, here's what you do for that. You can plant that sucker. Tomatoes have an amazing root system where, I don't know if you can see this on this little camera. You see all those fuzzy bits? See how the stem is fuzzy? If you plant that sucker, each of those little fuzzy bits will turn into roots. So, okay, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what you do is you chop off the sucker right at the crook of the tomato. Let's see. Oh, here's an example. This right here, this is a sucker. See how it's growing between the leaf and the main stem? This is turning into a second plant. It'll grow its own flowers and leaves and tomatoes. So what I'm gonna do, so I'm just gonna take that off. So, pretend that this was a big old sucker. You know, say it was something closer to along the lines of this thing, or like maybe that big. I've had a couple. This was one of them. So what you do is you stick it in a bottle of water. Doesn't matter what kind of water, what kind of bottle. Just stick in a bottle of water up to about halfway. Tomatoes will grow roots from however much is in the water. So if you stick a little bit in the water, it'll grow that many roots. If you can stick up to half the plant in the water, and all of that will root. Once you've got nice big long roots coming off that in the jar, you go out, dig a hole, plant it like you would plant a regular tomato that you get from the store. Keep it watered well, and that thing will grow into this. This was about that tall when I started, when I took it off the main plant. And as you can see, it's already produced fruit. We've already taken a few off of it. It's grown. Sorry about that. Somebody called in the middle of my vlog and I am using my phone, so it turns off the video camera. Anyway, where was I? It produced fruit, it's grown up to here, it's growing more flowers, and it's still on its way up. The last thing I wanted to talk about with our tomatoes is how we trellis them. Most folks will go straight to a tomato cage. If you know anything about tomato plants, it's not really the best way to trellis your tomatoes. It makes them go all out to the sides, and you can't get to the flowers in the middle very well, and then your plant is limited in height to the height of the tomato cage. So unless you get like crazy tall tomato cages, it's not the best method. So what we've done is a string trellis. I don't know if you can see that up there. Yeah, you can. So what we do, I'll show you on the big tomato, it's easier to see. Let me turn the camera around. So what we do is we wrap the growing plant around this string. Back out a little bit. And you can see how it's wrapped around all the way down to here where it's tied to a stake at the bottom. You can see in this one, see, it kind of makes your tomatoes look a little wavy the taller they get. You know, we've got kind of this back and forth motion going on, but hey, if it gives it something to climb, that's all it needs. So as you can see, your tomatoes are really only limited by how tall your trellis is. So if you want lots of tomatoes, you want tall plants with lots of airy, breezy space between them, and what sparked it for us is if you're constrained by small spaces, go vertical. Grow to the sky, people. It's a great method for growing lots of tomatoes in a small space. And shoot, I mean, hey, this is one plant. One plant, people, that we let grow into 2 different main stems, and we've got a whole bajillion tomatoes off of it. So I guess that's about it. To sum up, I went over trellising, pruning, flicking your flowers, and picking your tomatoes. That's the 4 big keys on how we've gotten plants like that are just completely laden with tomatoes. Trellis them properly, prune them properly, flick your flowers, and pick your tomatoes. And you will have gorgeous, beautiful, healthy, airy tomatoes like these. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and check out some of our other videos. We've got some interesting tips on what we're doing as far as trying to homestead in the city, no less, going off grid, and just a couple lifestyle videos. You know, we're not terribly consistent about posting. It's been forever since my last video, but hey, I'm busy. My husband and I have a life. Sorry. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.